Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Tuesday morning, political fighters. Welcome to the July 21st, 2026 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278. Find my show on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, and YouTube. And email me at richard@wcpt820.com. Follow me on all the socials under Choose Views. And catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. And thumbs up to Devin for solving a morning drive issue. There you go. That's where you can get Choose Views, featured interviews. Joan Esposito, live, local and progressive, driving it home with Patty Vasquez. It's the Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and our other great shows and interviews. Also, in the evenings, make sure you are checking out the Politics Bar, the Matt McNeil Show, and the Gailey Show. And then while you're at it, whether it's the evenings or the daytime, make your way over to heartlandsignal.com to check out all of our great posts and interviews that we have there. And just to give you a couple of updates, let's see. There are Michigan is really dealing with the Smoky wildfire situation, and a lot of Republicans are going out and once again blaming Democrats for it is kind of their standard way of being. And let's see, down in Texas Senate candidate James Tallarico releases an ad showcasing a mariachi band from Marfa, who created 4 songs about him and his campaign, sort of giving a leading voice in that space. And a couple of my interviews from last week and some from Patty and Joan. So make sure you are making your way over to our spot, liking and sharing that which you see there. Excuse me. On today's show, I'll be taking your calls, actually, in the 6:30 to 7 o'clock hour. Wanted to give you guys a chance to catch up with us. We have some folks that have sent text messages, and I know that has some things to say. So give us a call today. We'll get you on for sure because we got time to make that happen. 773-763-9278 is the number, as you know. And in the 7 o'clock hour, Anderson Clayton will be with us. And if you guys remember, Anderson is the chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party. So we will be talking about all things North Carolina politics and probably a little bit about what's happening in the neighboring state, which I'm going to get to in a second. And then in the 7:30 hour, I should say, Iowa State Senator Caitlin Dray will be with us. And Caitlin is a huge success story on a couple of fronts, on a professional level as a newly elected state senator, but also on a personal level. She'll share that with us, and I look forward to bringing that to you guys when we get to the 7 and 7:30 hours. So that's what's happening today. Question of the day, and I'm going to get to a little quick commentary before we go to this first break. And we got more for you later. Question of the day. This kind of in the mix of all that's going on with folks like Graham Plattner and James Tallarico and Troy Jackson now that's the new leading Democratic candidate in Maine, but other places throughout the country. And it's a question that, I've been thinking about for a while, and particularly with this that's happening with the Maine situation. But what do you guys think is the reason that some politicians are picked, when some politicians are picked, there is this need to have a person who depicts the, quote, everyman mythology? Trucker cab, denim garb, boots, or outdoor attire. And stereotypically, I'll say that, white male. Why do you guys think that happens? What do you think is the reason for that? So again, what do you guys think is the reason that when some politicians are picked, there is a need to have a person who depicts the everyman mythology, the trucker cap, the denim garb, boots, and outdoor attire, and stereotypically white male? And ironically, when it's a woman who's running, Democrat or Republican, that happens there. Denim garb, trucker cap, boots, outdoor garb. I have my thoughts on it, but I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. What are your thoughts about that? And you can give us a call, of course, today. 773-763-9278 is the number. Send us a text to that same number and go to our Facebook page and leave us your comments there. And because I'm curious what you think about it, because it's one of those things. When I was looking at some of the video of Troy Jackson, and I saw a clip of James Tallarico, it was interesting that when I watched or looked at what they were wearing. So I'm curious. Let me know. Let us know by giving us a call or checking out our other two options, which is to text or to go to our Facebook page. All right. Senator Lindsey Graham obviously has passed away, and it's been announced that his sister, Darlene Graham, has announced that she'll run for a full term for her brother's old seat in South Carolina. She says, "I've made the decision." She announced it, of course, on Fox in her interview that clipped out yesterday afternoon. "I'm in." She was sworn in last week to replace her brother, who died recently, as we all know. Her appointment was backed by Donald Trump and seen as a move to fill the seat more than just as a caretaker, but now she's running. And so that's the update in that space. So the word that comes to mind there's a couple words that come to mind, and I'll breeze through these real quick before we go to the first break. Nepotism to some extent, but, it's less of that because he's not here to put his thumb on the scale to get her in. So nepotism may be the word that comes to mind, but it's not really the one that's as efficient as others. But the one that comes to mind for me is unqualified. Unqualified. She is flat out unqualified. We just went through this same thing talking about politicians on the left showing up, and suddenly they're the latest of the day. They're the new flavor. And then they crash and burn. Now, this is what's going to probably happen. Darlene Graham is, I'm going to start referring to her as Lindsey's sister. Darlene Graham is, from everything in that measure, seemingly a good person, blah, blah, blah. All those things that, the boxes that get checked. She's a Southern white woman that'll probably inspire a lot of the Southern Belle mythology to come out and vote for her so that we can keep one of our own. It'll be a lot of that sort of interstate conversation, or I should say intrastate conversation. And she will be positioned as sort of the white female savior that knows her place and will prevent South Carolina from going into the abyss by having a younger, by standards that are used for measurement, prettier but not as wholesome to the land person as Dr. Annie Andrews is. And all the isms around gender and race will come forward. And we got two white women, but race will play into it. Because how they'll position this is that Annie's one of them. Dr. Andrews is one of them. And they'll go down the path of trying to trash her as a great doctor, and make Darlene look like she's this great upstanding Southern belle. That'll be the play. Watch how this comes out. It isn't rocket science to figure this out. We've been down this path before. That's how they'll play it. And there'll be a little bit of a leaning into, I want to carry on my brother's legacy. You really want to do that? But to that end, that's what it'll be. And then you'll see Trump trying to lean into it, and he'll probably make himself look like a butthole in the process of getting too close to her and all the things that Trump does. But that's how this will play out. And it'll be on lines of, we need to keep our Southern, South Carolina isms in place. And the only way to do that is by having Darlene be our senator. But at the end of the day, I go back to where I somewhat started. She's unqualified. She's unqualified. Just because she's a resident of the state and the sister of the late Senator Lindsey Graham doesn't make her qualified at all. And the whole conversation around outsider and this, that, and the other, No, Lindsay was not an outsider. So to say that that's what they need is to have someone that's not part of politics is hypocritical to the brand that they built under his name. So we'll see what happens. But that's a little bit of my early commentary this morning. We're going to take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You are listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. And now, AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu, and we will be right back. Guys, welcome back to Choose Views. Oh, my goodness. We laugh in the studio sometimes, and there's a little bit of a carryover. But here we are on July 22nd, 2026. And if you're just tuning in, you are listening to Choose Views, and I'm Richard Chu. Let's hit them with a couple of quick Choose Views news items. Gas prices top $4 a gallon as U.S. and Iran's tensions escalate. The average price of gas jumped back up past $4 a gallon yesterday, according to AAA. Up 13 cents from just earlier 1 week ago. Brent futures, meanwhile, fell to around $88 a barrel after notching their biggest single-day increase in months on Sunday when Iran declared the fragile ceasefire effectively is over. Escalating attacks suggest the conflict could still broaden in scope and in length, said one energy analyst. The FDA says Taylor Farms' cyclospora test was a false positive. They walked back claims, meaning the FDA, that the parasite has sickened thousands across the United States, was found on lettuce from Taylor Farms. The agency reclassified Saturday's finding as a false positive and added that the cyclospora parasite has not been detected on any of its samples. That leaves a source of an outbreak a mystery. Though illnesses have been linked to shredded lettuce sold at Taco Bell restaurants in 5 different states, Taylor Farms had previously recalled lettuce grown in Mexico out of an abundance of caution. And maybe what we might need to do is stop cutting federal agencies so we got people in place to be able to help in this area. But there you go. Paramount and Warner Brothers mergers paused by a judge amid a legal challenge. The closing of Paramount Skydance's acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery has been put on hold for at least 14 days as a judge weighs a legal challenge mounted by a coalition of 12 state attorneys general. The states, led by California, filed a lawsuit against Paramount last week, alleging that the Hollywood mega deal could stifle competition and harm industry workers. Paramount had hoped to close the deal this week. U.S. District Judge Arceli Martinez-Ogoyan scheduled a hearing for early August to decide whether the pause on the merger should be extended. And last but not least, the World Cup was a $9 billion success, and 2030 could be even bigger. Despite all the criticism of FIFA leading into the World Cup, the eye-popping ticket prices, the high transportation prices, the hotel vacancies in host cities, the tournament once again delivered for soccer's governing body. FIFA estimates it will net over $9 billion in record revenue this year. Spain won the championship on Sunday with a dominating 1-0 victory over Argentina after 6 weeks, featuring shining stars like Erling Haaland, Kylian Mbappe, and of course Lionel Messi. The 2030 tournament in Morocco, Portugal, and Spain is expected to expand from 48 to 64 teams. Not bad. Share some of that revenue with the league and all the rest. Make sure that people are getting paid, and not the folks in the C-suites of FIFA. Today on Live, local and progressive, Joan Esposito will be taking your calls, then talking to Julie Rosinski. Excuse me. Author of the Salty Politics newsletter on Substack and co-founder of the not-for-profit Lift Our Voices, and also legal analyst and podcaster, author Jill Wine-Banks. That's weekdays here, 2 to 5 on WCPT, heartlandsignal.com, and TuneIn. Tonight, driving in home, Patty Vasquez will be joined by co-host Tim Walco. Excuse me, guys. And their guests include Courtney Fram, Executive Director of the H Foundation, ahead of this weekend's Goombay Bash, Chicago's largest and most joyful cancer fundraiser. Later in the show, you can hear Patty's interview with Michael Negron, former Special Assistant to President for Economic Policy in the Biden-Harris White House, and former Assistant Director of the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity under Governor J.B. Pritzker. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7 here on WCPT, AM 820, the Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Tomorrow, you got to check us out here on Choose Views because we'll be hanging with our good friend Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63 and Illinois State Representative Robin Gable, Majority Leader of the Illinois House of Representatives. She'll be here in studio with me, so you'll be able to check that out and catch our other episodes. And I'll give you more information a little bit later on in the show. All right, so today's segment of Something to Chew On goes back a little bit to my question of the day when I asked the question, why is it that when we pick a candidate, you know, that candidate's got to be dressed in the denim, the trucker cap. And by the way, nothing against denim or trucker caps, but you guys get the point. The denim, the trucker cap, the outdoor garb, boots, and all the rest. And is it something that we've just kind of gone along with for these years, or is it something that is a targeted effort? And has it gotten us into trouble? Have we missed out on people that didn't fit that narrative, or didn't fit the non-everyday man look, but still had the political instincts and the political curiosities and the political goals to reach the every person? And what I've come to see and learn in some of my review is that the everyday man political candidate has been strategically constructed to project relatability, structural independence from elite institutions, and a working class or middle class worldview. So that's in direct contrast to relying on traditional political pedigree, if you will, and this sort of archetypical framing of the outsider, populist, or citizen politician. But I think what happens in that case is that we overplay the hand of that everybody, like sometimes we talk about this in terms of kitchen table issues. I had this conversation with Mike Nellis about a year ago. Mike Nellis, Democratic strategist and guest on our show. I said, well, when you talk about the kitchen table issues and the everyday person and that sort of, middle class person, that middle class American, give me a visual of what that person looks like. And when I've sort of, loosely tested this with other people, they describe in many cases someone that fits sort of a middle class white American looking family. The cover of many of the ads and boxes of cereal and other things over the decades. That's sort of the stereotypical who is the kitchen table, who are the kitchen table folk, who are the people that are depicted as that part of our economy. And then oftentimes, in fact, more oftentimes than not, it doesn't show a blending of who we are as a country, a diverse country. It tends to lean towards showing still things that we saw in the 60s and 70s, mom and dad or a dad and mom with two kids, a dog, and a white picket fence home in a neighborhood that looks to be the representation of what Americana is all about. And we haven't, in many ways, based on my observation and some of the data that I see on the back end of who we target or who is targeted with our political marketing dollars, we haven't really shifted that much from that. And that's why I believe we have this argument for more diverse representation, is because the message that comes to us from our leading political voices and analysts and so-called consultants is stuck in the past. And when pressed, inevitably the political dollars, the political messaging, and frankly the country tends to go back to that sort of, we don't need to present the country as a diverse country politically. We need to present the country as one that fits the stereotype still. And I think that in some ways, that's how we got into this. Think about it from this perspective. Not every person that's a middle income person in this country is one that fits the everyday man archetype. For example, if you take a metropolitan area that's got 500,000 people or that's got 5 million people, or let's say 100,000 people and 1 million people, those communities are oftentimes surrounded by rural communities. But the bulk of the voters in the country, we've seen the data, are in metropolitan areas. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have that appeal, but I think that we should force ourselves to be thinking about a broader appeal visually and with the message. Because if not, we might be still stuck in the future. Stuck in the past, not leaning toward the future. Just my thoughts. And I think the concept of the everyday man or woman needs to be broadened and needs to be one that takes on and takes in the fact that we've got everyday men and women that live in not just rural areas, but in metropolitan areas. And they might look a little bit different than the stereotypical push that we get sometimes. But there you go. Something to chew on today that I thought you guys might appreciate. And it leans itself into our question. What do you guys think is the reason that when some politicians are picked, there is a need to have a person who depicts the everyman mythology, trucker cap, denim garb, boots, or outdoor attire? And is it just leaning into a stereotypical white male? Let us know. Give us a call. 773-763-9278 is a number. You can send us a text to that as well. And by all means, you can make your way over to our Facebook page and leave your comments there. Going to take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. This is Chew's Views. If you're just tuning in, 773-763-9278. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, we're having some fun this morning. All right, guys. So part of the question that I had a moment ago was based in being a little bit provocative. I'm curious what you guys have to say about this. So I do want to hear from you. I do want to get your calls. So let me know if you've got something to say. Send us a text. I'll try to get those read, and then we'll grab the calls as well. But here's the thing: it's based in curiosity, but it's also based in just looking around us. So there's a lot of people, and this was sent to me, that have been systematically left out of the system. We know that. This kind of sounds weird. Systematically left out of the system. The system is one that we know has created a tremendous amount of economic trauma, as was sent to me a moment ago. And that trauma has left a lot of people feeling disconnected to what we believe, or we've said we believe is good for all in America, we the people, and all those other great phrases and such. But at the end of the day, so accurately put, it doesn't relieve us from the economic burden that is definitely hits so many people's lives. And this is somewhat of my interpretation of what was sent to me. That then leaves what's left after that is people looking for not a hero, but a savior, someone that's going to come in and be the guy that's going to ride in on the white horse and save us. And it also lends into a couple of texts that you guys have sent me. Nancy says the everyman phenomenon may be an attempt by billionaires and wealthy, affluent people to create an illusion that they are like you and I. However, there's also a misogynistic notion that the everyman represents a strong man who is educated and hardworking. So, is a strong man who is uneducated and yet hardworking. Let me get that correct. So it sounds like it's a way to try to push back at the educated class and the parts of our society that on another side of this conversation have worked hard. Like, I look at this sometimes and think, what about the people who work hard, that get an education, and they do all of those things that we say are part of what we should do to succeed in our country. And they go on to be, the every man or every woman that works for a big law firm or goes to medical school and becomes a great physician, et cetera, et cetera. But they came from what we would probably, label as, regular start, regular beginnings. And I'm not even making that a conversation about race or culture, but just they came from a regular middle class, regular income family, and they went on to become a superstar. That person is, in my mind, kind of the every man or every woman. They just went on and did something that's extraordinary in a monetary way or in other ways. So why are they not the, quote, everyday or every man or every woman or everyday person? Let's see what else is out there. Good morning. The marketing is rooted so deeply in subliminal images that it has become hard to change what should look like in our political candidates. Okay, I get it. Hence, the look that we described. That comes from Cassandra. Yeah, it is deeply rooted. And that's why I kind of loosely use the example of, what was on the cereal boxes and what were on so much of the packaging when it came to consumer goods. They were supposed to look like the families that represented sort of that post-World War II, we saved the world, and this is the world we want, or the country, how our country should look. It's all built into that. So there's a very, very good point there in terms of the subliminal images, Cassandra, and it dates way, way back. But I saw, let me tell you another thing that I saw, and then we're going to maybe grab a call. One of the things that I saw was, and some of this I know, and no one's touched on it yet, but I'm sure you guys will at some point in this conversation today. I was looking at this recent sort of town hall that James Tallarico had down in Texas. And he was in a room on a stage with a number of folks in there, fairly balanced, but mostly it seemed to be probably maybe 60-40 of color and 40 not. So a mix of black folks, Hispanic folks, and other folks of color, and then the rest were white folks. And, there was him standing there with a button-down shirt, white button-down shirt on, I believe, a blazer, jeans, and boots. And I thought, okay, open your brain, Chew, and I have a very open mind. I thought, is that the representation of the people that were there? Is it to appeal, I should say, to the people that were there in that room? I don't know. But is it regional? Is it geographical? Is it state? Is it county? And don't get me wrong, I'm not picking on his attire. I'm not saying that at all. He looked great, very sporty. But is it geographics? Is it regional? What do you guys think it is? Is it sort of a need to look like they are part of the community? When he goes to Washington if he gets elected to sit in the halls of Congress and legislate as part of that deliberative body, is he going to be wearing boots in Congress? And that's not to say that's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just curious. Is it what he wore to try to appeal to the people that are in that room? Or is that what he would prefer to wear? Would he wear those to church on Sunday? I don't know. But I wonder if we have allowed ourselves to kind of creep down this path that we've got to look the part versus be the part. Because that's the underbelly of what I'm trying to say here. We need to have folks that are being the part, I believe, rather than just looking the part in our political conversations. And I'm not picking on Republicans particularly right now. I'm talking about Tallarico. And I could say this about other folks that have run that we love. So it's a question that we have to be, I think, more mindful of what's the quality of the person that's running and what he or she stands for, what are their permanent interests and all the rest, versus just the look. So conversely, if that person were in a room full of quote unquote corporate executives that he or she is pitching them for money for his campaign, should he or she wear, the quote business attire that the rest of the room might be wearing? You got 20, multimillionaires sitting in a room that are about to write a check to that person's campaign. Does he or she show up in a blazer, slacks, a button-down shirt, and boots, or does he or she show up in a suit or skirt attire, whatever it might be, male or female, heels and black polished shoes? So you guys get what I'm asking, and it might touch some of you guys the wrong way. You might think I'm being biased on my question, and I'm not. I'm just curious why we do it, or why you think we do it. And his image becomes situational image, let me qualify that, becomes become more important than the content of the person that's in the room. First impressions, that's part of it too. I was putting some notes together on this. That's part of it too. But, my curiosity is there. Let's grab a quick call before we go to a break. Let's go to Daryl. Daryl, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Richard. This is Daryl.
Hey.
I may not have a white horse, but I do have a white Ford 150 pickup.
Okay.
All right, and I want to tell you the attire that I wear, and I believe is a true man. A man should dress like he is, and mine is the boots are Timberland boots with Vibram soles and Carhartt pants or bibs, and a ball cap, either a Bass Pro Shop cap or John Deere or Ducks Unlimited. Now, I do like to shop at Bass Pro Shops, and when my wife wants to go out and shop, we take her to Walmart's. And she's not the prettiest gal, but can she cook? I'll tell you what. A man should dress the way he is. I dress like I'm ready to work, or I just got done working. You understand what I'm saying? And I feel this is a white privilege. This is the American male. Carhartt, Carhartt pants, bibs, but whatever. That's for the summer.
So if I'm running for office and to your point, so we're going to use your words, a man should dress. I'm going to say a man, but I'm going to say a person. But a person should dress the way that they dress. So that's kind of extract what you said a little bit. So
show them what you are.
So if I'm running, again, I'm putting this in the political context. If I'm running for office and I'm going to follow your guidelines or your belief, which I respect as your belief, and I'm coming to speak to a crowd, then I should dress the way that I dress. That's kind of the label or not the label, but the direction that you would give me. So if I walk in with a suit on and a tie, and then I'm dressed the way that, I dress for meetings, would you then see me as not, what would you see me as? If I roll into a meeting of the folks that you just described, but I have on a suit, a tie, and polished black shoes, talk to me, Daryl.
Well, I would say it's up to you the way you want to dress, and you're a damn looking good guy. I know that. And let's see, if I do have to go to a wedding, of course I'll go to Target and pick out the best pair of slacks and shirt that I can find. And yeah, I do not. What a person is on the outside, I want to. It's what he's on in the inside.
I got you, Daryl. That is.
And Richard, I'm just teasing you. This is Ken from Rogers Park. I'm just teasing. Last time I was This is Ronnie Reagan calling.
You blew. I knew who it was. Right?
I had to tease you.
I knew you were throwing me some curvebballs because.
Oh yeah.
When you said the thing about oh gosh, well, we take her to Target. I was like, okay, he's pulling my string on this one now.
No. She may not be the best looking woman, but she can cook.
I mean, she can cook. Man, oh man,
Bass Pro Shop and Carhartt Carhartt blue jeans. Got the Timberland boots and everything, and
Oh gosh,
I had to pull your leg.
that's good, man. That's really
Did you
good.
like, instead of a white horse, I do have a white Ford 150 pickup, which is true.
You ain't got it. You don't have a 250? Come on, man.
Oh well, I can't afford that right now. My wife just got laid off at the Walmarts.
And you've been spending too much. You've been spending too much money at Carhartt, so there you go.
No, Bass Pro Shop.
Bass Pro Shop. My bad. That's right.
Bass Pro Shop. A man is in heaven.
In
When
Bass
he's
Pro
at the
Shop.
Bass. Oh yeah, I'm in heaven there.
Especially
Yeah,
when
my name's Daryl.
you signed up for the membership too.
I didn't know this one. It's so far away. I thought I'd tease you a little bit
Well, I appreciate this morning.
because I did the Ronnie Reagan last time. I said, "Well, Richard,
That's
this is
right.
Ronnie. There you go, blaming everything on me.
Yeah, that's
you can't
right.
blame the fires on me.
But you
'Cause I'm
know,
up in heaven."
but Ronnie, I know we've had this conversation before.
Yes, Richard.
All right, man. Thank you so much for the call.
Okay, I hope I made your day.
You did. Thank you. Big old smile, y'all. We got to take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and AM 950 as well. Progressive Voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Richard Chu. Thanks for tuning in to Choose Views. Let's grab a couple other quick calls. We got some great comments coming from folks on our text group. But let's grab a quick call. Let's go to Al in Franklin Park real quick. Al, good morning. Welcome to the show. You got an answer to the question.
Yeah, I got an answer. I'm going to say who's the we, sometimes, because that varies, when the people are the ones picking them and they get above the noise, like Mondami in New York, some of the other people, Jasmine Crockett was in there for a while, and other people. And sometimes when the corporatress gets in there, or we find out with the, the guy we were just talking about, and I'm sorry, I'm losing it again.
Plattner, Tallarico.
No, oh, wow, sorry, Richard.
That's okay.
But just the fact that we're looking for his replacement right now because
Lindsey Graham.
the people who vetted him were not good enough, so we went away from him. So not Lindsey Graham. We're still working on the race we started with, the race that the guy just got out of on the East Coast.
You mean Maynard, Plattner, and now Troy Jackson. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's
early in the morning.
Funny, but yeah, it's early in the morning, and you got a lot on your mind a lot of time. But that's what I'm referring to, and it's mainly getting it above the noise and letting the people pick. When the people pick, we do good, like we did with Mondami. Like we had Ann Richards in Texas for and we had nefarious people working behind the scenes to get her out of there. And so it's so much about media and control and what happens in the back rooms. But so yes. People are picking some of these white male everyday men for us, and then when we get a woman in there or somebody else in there, that gives our adversaries a lot of ammunition to pull against them.
Yeah.
And is one of the reasons they don't get in there. So it's just, man, I just think it's all about media and how we handle people and getting above the noise. Did I make any sense there?
You brought it home very well, Al. I got you. Thanks for the call this morning.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Have a good day.
You too, Al.
Yeah. Bye. Yeah.
Bye. Let's see what Andre has to say real quick. Andre, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning to you, Mr. Chu. I wanted to kind of stick to your subject matter, but I kind of caught the end of what you said about the appearance and how a person is dressed. Can you just maybe brief me a little bit on what your question was about that?
I was speaking specifically about politicians that are running for office, and the question was, what do you guys think that about when some politicians are picked? There's this need to have a person that depicts the everyman mythology, the ball cap, the denim garb, boots, outdoor attire. And oftentimes it ends up being a stereotypical white male, and in some cases a white female that represents sort of the everyday, every person image of America. And I'm curious why we've gone down that path, why we are still sort of stuck in that representation in certain, is it geographical? Is it, I'm just genuinely curious about that. So that's the basis of the question. That's what we're talking about.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I agree with what you said, because I'm thinking back to John McCain when he was running for president. He made a big deal about this guy they called Joe the Plumber.
Yep.
And Joe the Plumber was there, and he was one of those guys that just looked like the average guy, whatever. But appearance, in my opinion, means something. Tell you the truth, I never liked how that guy looked that was running for office, that Graham Plattner. I mean, he had all of that hair all over his face. His hair was all over his head. He wasn't well shaven. And I think when you go before the appearance, I heard a guy say a long time ago, how your head looks says a lot about where your head is at. So if you're on there on stage looking like that, then that gives people the feeling that you have that I don't give a darn type of attitude. And that's not good for a politician to look like that. I don't care what your appearance should reflect something about you.
The interesting thing about that with Plattner is that I get the unshaven look with guys. I get the hair, kind of look. I get that. I truly do. And whether of any man of any community or culture, I get that. And I also believe that representation of yourself is probably the biggest tell when you're that way. And if you're being yourself, that's cool. But I'm not criticizing. I'm genuinely curious how we have been in that mode. And it seems like when there's a need for a politician to, quote, reach the everyday person, this is what we come up with. Or that image, I should say, what we come up with. So, yeah, I was genuinely curious.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. And basically, you should be concerned about, I think you said, the bread and butter issues. That should be the main concern.
Yeah, I mean, you can be dressed however, but if the issues you aren't really covering the right way, or if that then leads people to not do the research and truly do the vetting and understanding of what the person's all about and what they stand for. And I put this out here now. When I go back to Lindsey Graham's sister, I said I wasn't going to do that. Darlene Graham is running for this office, but guess what? She's going to be presented as this great-looking Southern belle, smart, mature white woman that represents, but then suddenly Dr. Annie Andrews is going to be pitted as this young whippersnapper that doesn't have the community in mind and they're going to make her look like she dresses too fancy. Watch what happens. So,
no, I have a tendency to agree with that, and they should just question her credentials just as you did, because she'll basically be a figurehead.
That's
when
it.
you go into an atmosphere like that and you don't know anything, then everybody's going to be dictating to you what to do.
They're going to run circles around her. She's going to be a rubber stamp. So
exactly, she's going to go along just to get along and try and walk in Lindsey's stead. But you mind if I say something quick about Lindsey Graham right quick?
Go ahead.
This is what I want to say. The airspace over there in Ukraine, where Vladimir Zelensky has been shut down ever since the war with Russia. In order to get over there to Kyiv, where Zelensky is at, you got to take 3 flights and you got 2 layovers. I think that what Lindsey Graham should have done, since there was such an extensive flight and you'd be in the air as a total of like 30 hours, he should have consulted with his doctor first to see if he was healthy enough to do that flight. Because that means getting on and off of maybe 3 planes and then riding local in different vehicles for a good little while,
Yeah.
So I think that might have been
the compression and decompression, without a doubt, for anybody of any age, but certainly with some of the known medical things that we talked about and all the rest. And once again, the professor, Andre Andre, is you're showing care for somebody. As much as we couldn't stand what he did politically, we don't want the dude to go through that kind of hell. So you're a very, very, very good point, Andre. Thank you for that. We got to bounce, man.
Well, I'm a proud Democrat, lifelong Democrat, and even if I suddenly became a millionaire, I would still be a Democrat because I know that there are people out here that need social services and social programs, and a lot of the people that are wealthy, they want to lean Republican just so they can get a tax break. But what about the people in your family? What about your aunts and uncles and nephews and cousins that are not able to sustain themselves? They need social programs. Yep. So I could never be a Republican for that reason. Thank you, Mr. Chief.
Thanks, Professor Andre. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, guys. We won't go to a break right now, but I will say a couple things. I see your calls. We will try to figure out how to squeeze them in some way, somehow. But hang in there with us, and we'll see what we can do. Let's see. I want to come to a quick text message. Someone said that just be a good politician. I'm giving you the edited version. It could care basically not what you look like. Just be good at legislation. I'm gonna be a good politician, and I want to be your politician. I want to be a good politician. This person's basically saying they're sick and tired of hearing politicians say, "I'm not a politician. I'm not a career politician." That's getting tired. Just say that you are. Once you enter the ring, you are a politician at that point. Just become a good politician. I like that. That comes from one of our listeners here. All right. Let's get this break in, guys. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520 AM, and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. When we come back from this break, we'll be talking with the Democratic chair of North Carolina, Anderson Clayton. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chu.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us. I'm Richard Chu, and yes, this is Choose Views. Over the last almost a year's time, this young professional, and I say that respectfully, has kind of set the world on fire. And we've been able to be blessed to have her on the show a few times. And I made one statement, and the next thing you know, we're off doing a project together that I hope is one that we can do more of. Anderson Clayton is the chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party, and she's a lot more than that, guys. She has been a complete energizer to the party in the state, but in the region as well, and I dare say the rest of the country. Good morning, Anderson. Welcome back to Choose Views.
Thanks for having us, Richard. Always good to be on here with y'all.
You know, I had a moment earlier where I was talking about something that's, I guess I'll call it regional because it's not your state, but you are the neighboring state to South Carolina, and obviously we'll
you talking about Darlene Graham this morning?
Come on now. I've hung out with you, so we don't have to do all the pretense here. Good Lord, Anderson, what are y'all thinking about this? I gotta ask you. You know how I am.
Look, I think that it is, of course, it was surprising, I believe, and I know that Annie Andrews, who's the nominee out there in South Carolina right now, is going to still continue to do everything that she is, making sure that she's meeting people where she is in communities, advocating as someone who is a pediatrician and someone that knows firsthand right now the cuts that are happening in Washington, D.C. are genuinely impacting the South more than any other region in the country. And I think that she's going to be able to go up against anybody that they're going to put in that seat against her. But I know it's going to be a tough race. It always is, especially in South Carolina. And so if you all are feeling generous and y'all are watching everything going on, I hope you're giving a little money to the South Carolina Democratic Party today too, everybody.
It's true. I mean, this is one of those things, and it's why I briefly talked about it earlier, but it's not just that she is not qualified. That's the word that came to mind. Nepotism, I didn't think that really fit because he's passed away and he hasn't leaned on the scale to get her the quote-unquote job. But political nepotism, maybe, with Trump saying she should be the one. But at the end of the day, she's just not qualified. And we've got way too many people and broadly in politics, but specifically the Republican Party, state officials as well as national, they're just not qualified to be in the role. And she, if anybody right now, represents that probably more than anybody that's running in any race anywhere in the country. She is not qualified to be a U.S. senator in any state, period. So.
Well, I don't think Donald Trump is qualified to be president, and unfortunately, that's where we are right now. And so I know that we got a lot to prove to voters throughout the country to make sure that they understand who's actually fighting for their best interests this year. And I think that a lot of folks are going to be coming to the table because they know that, I always say God rest his soul, but I'm like that Lindsey Graham was not doing anything to help the people of South Carolina while he was in Washington, D.C. when it comes to the people that were the most poor and the most impoverished and also the most helpless right now throughout that state and throughout our region of the country. And so I know that we've got a lot of work to do throughout both our states, Well,
let's talk about someone that has done the work in the past and is doing the work now, and that's former governor
Roy Cooper.
Why did I get stuck? Former Governor Roy Cooper, who's running for U.S. Senate in your great state of North Carolina. How are things going, Anderson? And what can we be doing? What should we be doing from anywhere in the country that here's our conversation today?
Well, things are going so well in North Carolina that if you're listening to this from anywhere else, just know that Republicans are so afraid of voters in the state that they have decided that they are going to strip away voting locations off of college campuses and out of predominantly black communities across North Carolina, thanks to Republicans on our state board of elections that control it right now. And that was from the fact that our state legislature stripped that power away from a Democratic governor in our state just at the end of 2024 after they lost their supermajority in the state house in North Carolina after that election cycle. And so we're doing a lot of voter protection efforts on the ground right now. Guilford County, which is where Greensboro is, which is where I've got any Aggies that are listening to this right now, Aggie Pride, the University of North Carolina at A&T is really struggling because they know that they're going to be seeing their voting site potentially taken off of their campus today. A&T is the largest public HBCU in the entire country, and we are seeing Republicans at the Guilford County Board of Elections target those students. And so today at 2 p.m., we've got a meeting that we are all going to. The Board of Elections is going to be meeting, and they're going to be deciding whether or not they're going to strip that voting site off campus. But we know that Republicans control that board right now and are dead set on trying to do that across our state and have so already. So we're trying to make sure that we're educating students about getting out to the polls. And I also know that this is really going to shake up a lot of students on campus to make sure that they are energized to get out and vote this year because Republicans keep on trying to take it away from them.
And the other thing too that rides along with that, and thank you for presenting that to our listeners, Anderson, but also that the election officials are trying to, I don't want to say trying to, but they're kind of leaning into, because it's Republican run, leaning into this thing that Trump's trying to do with regard to the citizenship program and how they're trying to find some dots to connect that say that there are they're flagging registrations or something. Help us out with that.
I mean, in North Carolina, they obviously the Department of Justice and Homeland Security have requested almost every voter roll from every state in the country. The good news that I will tell folks is that North Carolina, unfortunately, thanks to Republicans, since 2023 has had one of the strictest voter ID laws in the entire country. And so we are used to Republicans trying to figure out ways to keep people from voting in every way. And I think that that's exactly what we see right now at the federal level. Donald Trump's just trying to subvert democracy, and he's trying to put a denial system in our elections, right? Because, I think that our elections right now are safe. We need people to come out and vote, and I need folks to hear me when I say we cannot count any vote that is not cast, and so I need everyone to get to the polls. Donald Trump is trying to undermine our elections, though, and when he does that, he makes people think one thing, well, it's just not worth it. And a lot of folks right now think that about politics. And so we have got to be challenging that every step of the way, making sure that we tell folks every single vote matters in this state, in this country right now against this president in these midterms. And so I hope nobody loses the faith. I know it feels like everything right now from Washington, D.C. coming down is trying to demoralize, to disengage and to disenfranchise folks. But we have got to keep our spirits and our optimism high right now, because I have faith that this election is not going to turn out the way Donald Trump wants it to.
Well, and Anderson, when you were talking just now, what was inspiring to me is that our listeners in Santa Monica, California, Seattle, Washington, Portland, Maine, and Miami, Florida, and everything in between. I hope you guys heard the second part of what she said, not just in North Carolina, but throughout the entire country. You were spot on. That is the goal of this administration, is to depress the vote by having people think that their vote doesn't matter on a local level, on a state level, and on a federal level. That is their primary goal. And we've said phrases like this in the past. You and I have said them together and independently, that when we show up and show out, we win. And this is exactly where we are on every level when it comes to voting. So I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you zeroed in on that, because, the trickery is clear. The game is to keep people from the polls, whether it be by depressing people's vote or desire to vote, as much as the day of elections, trying to, have ICE there. Go ahead. Sorry.
Fear-mongering, right? Like,
yeah,
to your point there, that's what that is, right? It's trying to tell people, you're going to have a certain type of ID, and you don't have it to go to the polls, so you might as well not show up to vote. Oh, you don't know if you've got, if everything is correct, that your address matches your driver's license. If that's not the case, then you shouldn't go vote. And people fall into that so often because of the fact that they don't know. And so I tell anybody listening to this, regardless of where you are across the country, get involved in your backyard right now. Get a voter registration form, get a clipboard, and everywhere you go, from the grocery store line to a church pew to a Friday night football game, I hope to God you are out there making sure that you're asking everybody around you, are you registered to vote? Do you have a plan to get out and vote this year? Because some of those conversations are the most uncomfortable ones to have with a stranger, but it leads to some very friendly moments later on, because people are thankful that you care about whether or not they know their rights this year. And that is so important for each and every single one of us to be doing right now. Wouldn't you think, Richard?
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to tell you, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I've got a clip I want to play. I want you to hear. This is coming from a woman in Texas regarding the SAVE Act. So we're going to take a quick break, Anderson. When we come back, we'll go right to that clip. We'll come back to you because I want to get your thoughts on that. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and the AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. I'm talking with the Democratic chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party, Anderson Clayton. We'll be right back.
Well, I got denied to get a new license here in Texas because I didn't have proof of my first marriage almost 18 years ago, to prove that I went from my maiden name to his last name and kept it, and then went to my new name that I've had for 12 years. Okay? Love that for me. They were like, well, do you have your first marriage certificate? No, ma'am. Why the would I have that? Excuse my language. I'm a little peeved. Then she asked if I had my divorce papers to show that I was keeping my last name. She was like, well, why didn't you go back to your maiden name? Because I didn't want to change everything when I got divorced 18 years ago. This is insane. I've already had 2 real IDs in 2 other states. Why is this so difficult here? Okay. Anyway, rant's over.
Anderson. That's a woman who was denied the ability to vote because of her driver's license. You heard the story. Give us your thoughts there. Are you encountering any stories like that in North Carolina at this point? And more broadly, what are your observations? This is obviously tied to the SAVE Act.
Absolutely. I mean, as of right now, we have not heard, or at least I have not heard of some. Well, we haven't had voting yet either. That's the other thing. I mean, we're trying to help make sure proactively on the ground we're helping folks fix this as often as we possibly can. I mean, my voter protection team, Kat Lawson, is a phenomenal voter protection director and someone who is a former Duke University election law professor, and she has been rapidly on top of trying to make sure that we are over every single bit of this. But I mean, it is trying to make it harder for women to vote. And I think that right now we have got to be diligent about the fact that, again, this administration is just trying to make it harder and harder for people to vote versus helping enfranchise folks. And that is exactly what this party has done the entirety of the time, at least for me, that I've lived my life in the South, and also every other time before that, too. Like, Republicans are not interested in enfranchisement. They are only interested in picking their voters. And that goes from what we see with gerrymandering right now all across the South and all across the country, and also what we're seeing right now with things like the SAVE Act, and also what we're seeing with voter ID and trying to bring ICE into polling locations. I mean, all of it is trying to suppress a vote because they know how much this midterm turnout is going to be.
Meanwhile, they're not focusing on, in states like yours, getting a budget squared away. And then also let's talk about navigating some of the health outbreak with regard to the cycloporous issue. Talk about what's happening there. I mean, how are you guys trying to, for lack of better words, tag the Republicans with the lack of administrative help that's needed to prevent this, or to at least investigate it?
I mean, North Carolina was the last state in the entire country to pass a state budget. And we've got a citizen legislature, which means that, or a part-time legislature, right, which means that they're only supposed to be in session for a couple of months out of the year. And instead, Republicans have dragged out their short session as long as they possibly could, because they did not, again, want to pass a state budget and give public employees in North Carolina, state employees, which make up about 1 million people in our state, including public school teachers, the raises that they deserved after they had just seen their health insurance premiums double thanks to Republicans in Raleigh and Republicans in Washington, D.C. also. And so really what we've been able to do is targeted approach to the folks that, in my opinion, are the public servants that do every single the day-to-day work to make communities run all across our state, and be able to talk to folks about how disrespectful the one job a state legislator has that they have been to the people of North Carolina right now. And I've got some great state legislative candidates, including people like Lindsay Prather, who's a former school teacher. She's out in Buncombe County, North Carolina. So anybody that's got relatives in Asheville, you give them a call today and you say, hey, make sure you're voting for Lindsay Prather. And then also looking at people like Dante Pittman, who's out in Wilson County, North Carolina, one of my youngest state legislators that I got. And he's actually out in Arkansas right now doing drills because he is also a National Guardsman. And so Dante understands better than anybody exactly what this administration is doing right now by sending us into forever wars and not actually having the interest of people that wear that military uniform.
One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that, how coastal North Carolina is. A lot of times I think people think of North Carolina and they see it as more landlocked, but it's coastal. And as a result of that, I shouldn't say as a result, but as part of that, you've been dealing with some issues when it comes to hurricane recovery in line with the state budget. And yet you're still, there's this standoff that the Republicans are not providing the leadership. Governor Stein is doing everything he can do, but we've still got this stalemate because Republicans in your state legislature aren't getting the work done to take care of the shorelines and hurricane recovery. Talk a little bit about that if you can.
Yeah, Hurricane Helene was the worst natural disaster. And yeah, North Carolina is got coastal sides to it, but Hurricane Helene proved that climate change does not care where you live in the state of North Carolina or in the entire country, but it'll come for you anywhere, because Hurricane Helene was a natural disaster that ravaged 35 counties throughout western North Carolina. It was the worst natural disaster they had seen come through that region of the state, and ended up putting about 12 feet of water in people's homes. And it was horrific, and they are still waiting on the federal government to give about $60 billion worth of economic investment and also homes to be fixed in Western North Carolina right now. There's a documentary called Scars on the Mountain that's coming out in August, and we're going out to be able to make sure that in Burnsville, North Carolina, because it's going to showcase the people that are still waiting on help from the federal government out there. And honestly, people had time to make a documentary before the federal government came in to help them fix their houses. And so I feel like that's all you need to know about what's going on in Western North Carolina, too, right now. And the fact is that our governor has tried every step of the way to beg Donald Trump and FEMA and everyone else to help folks out there. And he is out there almost every single weekend right now trying to make sure that he is highlighting and not letting people forget about Western North Carolina. Because if you are calling in right now from Appalachia, anywhere in it, you know that Appalachia is one of the regions of this country that has been the most forgotten about, but also the most exploited. And folks right now are just pissed off at the fact that federal aid has not come into that part of the state. And we've got a really amazing congressional candidate out in Western North Carolina that's running against the Republican incumbent Chuck Edwards. His name is Jamie Ager. Jamie Ager is a farmer at Hickory Nut Gap Farm, which is one of the only regenerative agricultural farms in North Carolina in the western part of the state. And he is really focused on making sure that Hurricane Helene recovery is given in full to the folks that are out there right now. And so if you're anywhere or you got any family that live in the western part of the state of North Carolina, make sure that they're going out and they know the name Jamie Ager and that folks are coming out to vote for him this year, because Chuck Edwards has sat his ass in Washington, D.C. and done absolutely nothing, to be honest with y'all.
Yeah, well, that and that's what we're looking for. And I'm just sitting here with this big smile because you guys that are listening anywhere in the country, you've heard Anderson on the show a number of times, but you haven't had the chance to see her or meet her. If you haven't had a chance to meet her face to face, everything that you're hearing in terms of her energy and her fire, it's as real as water. I saw it up close and personal, and she's about a half a minute big in terms of physical stature, but she brings the heat and the energy to every meeting that she's been a part of. And the folks in North Carolina are blessed to have you as their chair. Anderson, let folks know as we wrap up how, again, they can find you, how they can get involved in what's happening there in the state, whether they're in the state physically and can vote or they're across the country. I want to make sure that I do my part to connect people to what you are doing there in the great state of North Carolina. Wrap us up real quick.
I was going to say, I am on every social media possible. So is the North Carolina Democratic Party. Give us a follow at Andy Breeze or NC Democrats. We would love to have y'all follow along. Sign up to get on our website and volunteer. If you're somebody who's like, I'm not on social media, Anderson, that's okay. We'll send you an email and just let you know what's going on in the state at ncdp.org. But we are so excited because North Carolina, we're going to deliver a U.S. Senate seat this year for the country, and we're going to hold a Supreme Court seat with Anita Earls and make sure that we're on the pathway to take back our state Supreme Court so that we can do what Wisconsin is going to do this year. Shout out to my neighboring state to the north, and that, well, not neighboring in that sense, but my state to the north, my sister state in the Supreme Court races, but just making sure Wisconsin's going to be able to hopefully have a Democratic trifecta this year because they flipped their state Supreme Court, and we want to make sure that we're on that same trajectory to do it. So Justice Anita Earls, everybody know her name too if you're in North Carolina right now and you're voting this year. But even if you're not, she is a national name to know, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Anderson, it's always great to have you on. I'm glad you're doing well. I know you've been accumulating the travel miles because you've been all over the place. Great segment that you did with Jonathan Capehart on MS Now. So keep the hard work up. We got your back way up here in Chicago. I think you know that by now. And everywhere else in the country, because you're one of the leaders and voices that we need in this time. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Richard Chew. We really appreciate y'all.
All right. Talk to you soon. Be safe.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. There you go, guys. That energy is real. I sat next to it for 2.5 hours when I went down to North Carolina back in March. We had our fireside chat. The point that many of the points that she made are strong, all of them, in fact. But one of the ones that I want to lean into before we go to this break is I say it all the time, and I say it because I mean it. What happens in state politics, state elections, is more important now than ever before in terms of our national politics. What's going on in North Carolina with the Republicans is a travesty. It just is. Our next guest, when we come back from the break, Senator Caitlin Dray will tell you the same thing. It is a travesty that Republicans are in that much power and they keep doing the same thing over and over again. But Anderson is of the voice that on a state level, we're going to have impact, and we're going to have an impact on the national level if we communicate, if we reach out, if we know how to find people. I'm telling you, that's what they're looking for down there. I talked to Pastor James Gaillard, as you know, he's been on the show a few times, and he said that folks from all over the country are reaching out to get involved in his campaign for a state Senate seat. That's how important it is. Let's take a quick break, y'all. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR in Warren County, North Carolina, 1520 AM and 103.5 FM, as well as our good friends at AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. When we come back, Senator Caitlin Dray will be with us. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. If you are just tuning in, I'm Richard Chu. Thanks to Anderson Clayton from North Carolina for being with us. She is a powerhouse voice, and we got another powerhouse voice who last summer decided that it was time to jump off the sidelines. I say she's much more than an average mom, and she, by all means, is above average leader. But I first have to give her a little bit of a respect in terms of the courage it took for her to take on and win this seat in Iowa, and then to do what so many people have to deal with, and that's a public health issue or a personal health issue that became public. So Senator Caitlin Dray is with us this morning from Iowa, and I just want to give you all the love and support and energy from the big old Windy City, your neighboring state, to let you know, Senator, we got your back, and anything you need from us, you know that we're here for you. But welcome back to Choose Views.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me and for all the warmest welcome.
Absolutely.
In the morning.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's early. I know it's early, even though it's, here we are. Senator Dray, I mean, listen, we were so excited last summer when you decided to step into the political ring, if you will, and you got it done. And we just were pulling for you and really are happy with you having been elected, having been sworn in, and now leading. Just give us an update on what 2026 has been like for you, and then we'll get into a couple of specific things that are going on there in the state of Iowa.
Yeah, you mentioned a personal health situation that became public. I chose that. I was elected in August of 25 and sworn in September. The day after Christmas, I was diagnosed with uterine cancer after about a year of going back and forth with my GP. And I had irregular periods, which is pretty normal for, it's common. It's not normal. It's pretty common for women my age to have cycle changes. And I wanted to figure out what that was. And I got the news the day after Christmas and said, well, of course, because the rest of my life is absurd. So why not add this level of, personal concern and chaos, quite honestly, into the mix. And then a month later, about 3 weeks after the session started, I had a hysterectomy and was back to work on the Senate floor a week later. And I am so pleased and grateful to report that I have a clean bill of health. I just need to do follow-ups. I didn't have to do any chemo or radiation or anything, but it really crystallized for me that the reality of cancer in Iowa had hit home very closely, obviously, and my family has a predisposition, but I also had the supports and the financial stability and the time off of work to do what I needed to do. And that is the exception in Iowa and not the rule. And to me, that's unconscionable when we have a rising cancer rate and don't have the supports in place for folks to deal with that. And so it was very fortifying, right, to talk about that from the Senate floor and have, effectively the whole state saying, like, we hope you're okay, and we understand what that feels like. We know what you're going through. And thank you for speaking up, because my sister or my mom or me, I have felt those same things. And to be able to come back a week later and just say, I'm good and I'm here to work and I'm also here to continue raising this issue, I think was encouraging for a lot of my constituents as well, just to feel seen and understood in that way.
Well, I can tell you from my vantage point of this, it was encouraging and inspiring to all of us to handle it the way that you did, but to also not run from it and recognize what you just said a moment ago, which is so accurate, that the systems that are in place to help you sustain and get through this should be something that's it should be for everybody. No questions asked. And so I think that's why some could say that, how the universe moves. You were the right person in this moment, in this particular seat, in this particular time, to talk about an issue that's an issue that Iowans are dealing with and have been for a while. Some of it's, and where it's coming from, whether it's environmental, whatever the case may be, or historical in terms of our genealogy, we still have to take care of it. And we need to be better prepared for when it happens. And it doesn't have to be as destructive as it has been for so many people that are improperly uninsured and all the rest. So again, I sincerely thank you for taking the lead in this conversation and helping other Iowans and folks throughout the country know that if we do this the right way, when it comes to our coverage for folks, we can save a lot more lives. That's important.
Yeah. And unfortunately, healthcare costs are one of the things that I'm hearing frustrations about right now. We're also in a public comment period in the state of Iowa about insurance rates increasing for a number of our providers. And we have a current majority in Iowa that says, we're going to pass an HMO tax increase, but we don't think that the insurance companies are going to pass that on to consumers. And we had testimony from the insurance companies that said, yes, we absolutely will pass a tax increase on. And part of that tax increase was born because we have a budget crisis in our state. And it was one way that the current majority was trying to fill the hole. And we said upright, left and center that this will go to consumers. This will raise their prices. And now we are seeing that being borne out in higher premiums for families only a couple of months later. And people are they're beyond frustrated. And they also are feeling quite hopeless when it comes to being able to afford a good life right now.
And unfortunately, the juxtaposition of this, Senator, is that Iowa has near the highest, if not the highest, or fastest growing rate of new cancer diagnosis in the country.
Yeah.
Am I right about that?
Yeah. So second highest rate overall, fastest rate of new cancers. And we're behind only Kentucky, who can trace their rates directly to mining and coal production, right? And because of a variety of factors in Iowa, it's not as clear for us. But we haven't done enough to figure out what the environmental factors are. Our governor said that we have a drinking problem in Iowa, and Wisconsin said, hold my beer. Wisconsin outdrinks us, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of binge drinking. And that's not a badge of honor, right?
And you're also not denigrating. You're just stating a material
exactly.
fact.
Like, those are just facts. Yeah. But to say that it's only due to our love of Busch Light or, only due to genealogical factors, it's all dismissing a variety of different things that could be to blame. And we have not done enough to study and diagnose what's going on with our environment to figure out what's causing our cancer rates.
Well, and it's also, unfortunately, you've got the bad side of the trifecta in the state of Iowa when you don't have the governor's mansion, you don't have the Secretary of State, the AG, or control of either of the two chambers. It just makes it worse because they're not going to take responsibility because We criticize Democrats sometimes for taking money from different groups. We get that. We understand that. But when you have a state where every decision-making body is controlled by the Republican Party, and they're getting money from big corporations that are blocking investigation into how are nitrates and pesticides and all that as part of the causation in the state, when those things are not being investigated and they're being blocked by those folks in power, that's a problem. So this is another reason, and I know you know this because you're there and you're dealing with it every day, why we need to have more Senator Caitlin Drees on point to address these things, because Republicans aren't fighting it at all, and in fact they're blocking what so many great Democrats like you are trying to do in the state. Talk a little bit about the relationship that is there with regard to the state legislature. I don't want to say, are you guys getting along, but how are you voices that are there? Not walking in each day with a sledgehammer, which I would be bringing. I'd drag one in and say, okay, let's go to work, y'all. But talk to us.
It's really interesting because when I'm knocking on people's doors, we're talking to a wide variety of voters. And I stood in someone's living room on Sunday and had a probably 20-minute conversation with them about how nervous and frustrated they were, about how they don't feel like things are getting easier or better for them. And it was 20 minutes before they said, "Are you a Democrat or a Republican?" And I said, "I'm a Democrat." And they were like, "Really?" Like, they were blown away. They're like, "I didn't think that I could have a conversation with a Democrat." And I was like, "Oh no, and it was like, here are some community resources. She's struggling with a tough medical diagnosis and needed help with some transportation and different things. I said, okay, here's a number you can call for, help understanding your insurance premiums and what you can do to get different Medicare situations. Here's a number you can call for transportation to your doctor's appointments." And she was so grateful. They followed me out of the neighborhood because they were my last door, and so they like came up behind me as I was leaving the neighborhood, and they pulled up next. And she goes, "I'm so sorry, I forgot to ask, are you cancer free now?" And I was like, "I am." And she was so like, we had just such this beautiful connection. But I had said that right now in Iowa, we're at a place where the best idea in the room is not winning because we have just been shut out of the conversation. And it's really frustrating, right? We had multiple discussions about how that bill's not going to come up because it was sponsored by a Democrat in the House. And so it won't see the light of day in the Iowa Senate. And there were a lot of discussions about how, well, that doesn't have 26 Republican votes, so it'll never come up. And they wouldn't come to us and say, "We think this is a good policy idea. We think this is necessary or beneficial or important to a majority of Iowans." We were just kind of shut out of those conversations. And as I'm talking to people, in Iowa, we have kind of a once in a generation opportunity, right? Open governor's race, open U.S. Senate seat. We have, four, in my opinion, we have 4 competitive congressional races. And we have a ton of state legislature opportunities. And, we talk about up ballot, down ballot, who's helping whom, and how does that all work? But really, we just want to be competitive across so that we can be having more productive conversations so that the best idea in the room can come up and help improve Iowans' lives, because we're not at that position right now. And I've asked a lot of folks who are either undecided or maybe more right than I am. I just say, are you happy with how things are going right now? And every single answer is no. I'm nervous for my kids. I'm nervous for my livelihood. I'm close to retirement, but I'm scared about what happens when I stop working. Will I be able to continue to afford the things that I need to live in dignity in retirement?
Right.
And there's just this general kind of sense of unease amongst people right now. And when you start to talk about it, they can drill down, but a lot of people are just like we're just white knuckling and can't really name what the thing is until you start to talk about it. And I mean, to go back to your question, it really is just a matter of, we have a majority party in Iowa right now who is beholden to corporate donors, who are subjecting Iowans to really bad ideas from out of the state, quite honestly. You know, this idea that eliminating the income tax is going to somehow solve all of our budget problems, when in reality we know when the wealthy pay their fair share, that we all have a better life.
There's more money in that bucket than in changing. It's. Let's take a quick break, Senator, and when we come back, I want to talk more about Iowa. Is it changing, and where we are with these numbers in terms of the seats? Because I've been trying to pay attention to that a little bit. Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR at 1520 AM 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. We're talking with Iowa State Senator Caitlin Dray. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. I'm Richard Chu, if you're just tuning in, and we're talking with Iowa State Senator Caitlin Dray. So, Senator, Iowa has a lot going on a state level and a federal level. You guys were able to sort of hold off or break the supermajority, not only with your win, but why am I drawing a blank on the other seat that you guys grabbed? But special elections.
Oh, yeah, State Senator Mike Zimmer.
That's right.
In, I think it's District 35. I don't know our numbers. But
yeah, that's all right. You know where the office is. That's what matters. So, talk to us about the move, or the moves that could be happening if we pick off these federal seats in terms of congressional seats, and the Senate possibility and or the governor's race.
I think, you know, I kind of alluded to this in the first segment. We have a once in a generation opportunity, and Representative Josh Turk will be the first one to point that out. He is an incredible legislator. He's an incredible, you know, Senate candidate. I'm really excited to see what happens with him. You know, he has the most interesting life story. And I won't go into that. I'm a fan. I was a fan before I was a colleague. And so, you know, between Representative Turek and Rob Sand as our Democratic governor candidate, we have 4 really dynamic congressional candidates across the state. And if we flip Iowa, we take back the House, right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty impactful. And I think when we talk about the enthusiasm that's on the ground right now, we're running the strongest ground game that we've had for at least the last decade, potentially longer. And people, I think, are, like I said, generally unenthused with how things are going in our state right now, and are ready to do something different. And it wasn't that long ago that Iowa was purple, right? And I think Trump and that brand of Republicans really capitalized on that feeling of unease, that feeling of anxiety that people are having right now about their economic reality. And now that some of the threads are fraying, I think in that coalition, there is a willingness to do something different, and to say, like, I am still feeling these frustrations, but clearly this was not the solution to my feelings of unease. And talking to as many voters as we possibly can, which is, you know, I'm working on writing notes as I'm on breaks here with my doorlet. That's really, honestly, that's where I get charged up, and I think that's where we make the most change. And so having that massive coordinated ground game is going to be really, really important. And it's also kind of that social proof too, where it's like, oh, I talked to somebody who was, voting XYZ and they didn't make it seem so bad. And so maybe I can do that too.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to talk to as many people as we can.
The story you told about being in the living room for a period of time and the person then asked you, where you sit politically. I think that's, well, I'm going to ask the question differently. Are you seeing that is more of the movement, more of the wave, where a state that was, to your point, purple for a long time, that moved red, is now oscillating and saying, we didn't get it right for whatever reason, whatever we thought we were believing or hearing. But are you genuinely seeing that there are folks who may have moved from purple to red that are looking at it and saying, it's on us at the end of the day? We voted for whatever we thought we were voting for. And are they open enough, Senator, to say, we need to move in a direction and give this other group a chance because what we've got isn't working? Are they really there, do you believe?
I don't know that there's necessarily that like I caused this or like I voted for this.
Mhm.
Because it's hard to admit, right? It's hard to
Sure.
admit that what you believe and maybe this personality or this this team that you've wrapped yourself in for the last 10 years isn't what you wanted. And so it's maybe less of a realization of this was my vote, or this person that I believed in isn't exactly what I wanted,
Right.
and more of a willingness for those of us who are already in the tent to say, yep, we're going to disagree on 1 out of 10 things, but those other 9 we're going to figure out together.
Mhm.
And whether it's reproductive care, it's public school funding, where we've got students who are being turned away from private school because they have different needs than a neurotypical student. It's our water, right? It's all of these things. Its wages have been stagnant. We have our minimum wage hasn't changed since I was in high school, which is longer than I would like to admit ago, right? And people are frustrated with that. And so when you present it with the caveat of like, do you feel like things are going well right now, or
Mhm.
what's hard for you right now? And someone can say, I'm nervous about being able to afford going to the doctor, and I can draw a straight line from a floor debate that I had about a health insurance tax increase for insurance companies directly to your premiums. People can start to connect those dots. And when we talk about healthcare, right, we have removed $1 trillion from our healthcare economy through cuts to Medicaid. And that will be devastating whether people utilize Medicaid or not. And so starting to connect those dots and saying like, yep, you can sit with me. I'm going to answer your questions. I'm not going to judge you. I had a guy, he wanted to talk about every right wing talking point that he's heard over the course of the last 4 years, right? 10
Mhm.
years, whatever it was. He's like, I want to understand about the border. I want to know about, EBT fraud and who's, they're popping out babies left and right because they need
Mhm.
more benefits.
Mhm.
And I just looked at him and I said, can I frame it for you in a different way? How desperate do you think someone has to be that having another child is the solution to their problems?
Mm.
And he sat with that for a second and said, okay. And I said, even if there is 10% fraud in this system, which there is not, right? We know that that's not true.
Right.
That means that 90% of people who are utilizing these services and using those benefits are in dire need, and those kids deserve to eat. And I'm going to feed 90% of kids before I'm going to worry about this 10% over here. And it really, I think that started to resonate. I'm hopeful that conversation will stick with him. This was a different family in that same neighborhood.
Yeah.
I stood in their kitchen for probably 15 minutes. My campaign folks get upset because I'm a very slow canvasser, because I'm real chatty. And so they're like, okay, we got to move on. But I'm like, no, we're getting somewhere here. Like,
It's effectiveness.
I'm gonna work. Exactly.
It's effectiveness,
that
Senator.
deep canvassing. Yeah.
I hear you. I mean, listen, I talk every morning for 2 hours, so I completely.
Do you want to come knock doors?
You know what?
Perfect.
Don't put me in that space, because my wife will be. Yeah, you need to go and help her knock on some doors. And you know what? We need to have that conversation offline, because, I'm that guy. I'm that guy. So if you're offering an invitation for me to come out to Iowa and walk some doors with you, maybe that's what I should probably do.
Any day of the week. And I mean that because we're knocking every day.
Gotcha.
That's that social proof, right? That's how we make changes. When somebody shows up at your door and said, I see you and I understand what you're going through, and here's maybe one solution. And I think that's the other thing, right? Is we have to stop promising people that this will solve all of their problems,
Right.
but that they can come along with us and say, like, this vote will help move things, and this election can maybe change something. And this is a way for you to take back some power in your life.
How can folks find you, Senator Dray? How can they get involved in your campaign?
Well, when you're ready to sign up to do a shift of doors, you can go to drayforiowa.com and scroll down to the volunteer section. Otherwise, you can find me, Dray for Iowa on Facebook, Caitlin Dray on Instagram, and I am insufferably online. This will probably make the highlight reel for today. I'm doing some content creation
There you
today,
go.
so you might
There
see
you go.
choose views on Instagram.
Cool. Senator Caitlin Dray, thanks for hanging out with us this morning. We appreciate all your hard work. We'll talk to you soon, and I might be flying into Des Moines.
Can't wait.
All right.
I'll see you then.
Be well. Talk to you soon. All right, guys, we got to wrap it up. 773-763-9270 is a number as well. Always stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show. Take a deep breath and make your life count. We will see you tomorrow.